Alright, I'm excited today. We've got a free pattern project. So it's going to be this stocking cap or Santa cap. You can put whatever kind of pom-pom on the top of it you want. I just made this floppy one. It's kind of fun, different. So I have most of another band finished, so we'll talk about how to make this. It's actually a really simple design that hopefully will be pretty easy for you. Okay, so this is, I'm pulling out my yarn. I just used Caron Simply Soft yarn, which is a basic acrylic yarn you can find in most craft stores, or you could use any other size 4 yarn, that's like a worsted weight yarn. And I used an eye crochet hook. This one's from Furls Crochet. I love them. Okay, so to get started, I didn't show this part on the video, but you do a chain of 61 and then join it together. The first row is just a regular row of half double crochet all the way around. And then you're going to continue just working in the round, so you don't want a seam. You could, if you wanted, join and continue, but I just worked in the round. So you do get kind of a little jog at the beginning where you start working in the round, but I'd rather have that than a seam. So that's personal preference. However, you don't want to turn. If you're seaming it, you don't want to turn because we're working half double crochet in the third loop. So one row of regular half double crochet and then 10 rows of half double crochet in the third loop. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is ending my 10th row. So just a refresher, if you're not remembering what it means to go in the third loop for half double crochet, you'll yarn over like normal, but then instead of going through one of these two normal loops, like you would normally do for a crochet stitch, you're going in this loop right after it, in the back. So there's your two top loops, you're going in the one right behind it, yarning over, pulling up, yarn over and pull through all three. So it's a regular half double crochet stitch, you're just going through a different loop. But now I'm going to need to switch colors, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through that third loop and I'm just going to single crochet, and then I'm going to go through that third loop and I'm going to slip stitch. Just to make it bind off the white, and I need to switch colors, so I could have done it on that slip stitch, but since I forgot, I'm going to just do another one. Instead of pulling through the white, I'm going to pull through the red. And then I'm going to just chain 1 instead of 2 because I'm going to end up working in the round again. And I want it to kind of gradually go up. So now I'm going to do half double crochet in the back loop all the way around this row. So I've gotten all the way around my first row with the red, and now I'm going to continue on. I'm going to do now a row of half double crochet with the red, just regular half double crochet, and that's going to be the stitch that I use for the rest of the hat, the whole thing. So okay, so here is the simple thing about this hat. So every time I go around, I'm going to decrease 2 stitches. I'm not going to tell you where exactly to decrease them. If you want, you can make them on the sides. For mine, I kind of staggered them, so I did some on the sides and some on the center because I wanted it to be more rounded. But I'm not going to tell you exactly where. If you want it to look more round without an obvious seam area, then just stagger them. So when I did this, I kind of did one in the front, one in the back on one row, and then one on each side on the next row. I just tried to make sure that they weren't exactly on top of each other, and that I had 2 per row. And they're about the same distance apart so that it gets smaller evenly. So for this, I'm going to do one on this side and one on this side. And if you wanted to make it on both sides, then what you can do is you can put like a stitch marker on each side so you know about where you want your decreases to be. So I'm going to do my first decrease here. just have to keep track of how many decreases you've done on that row, because you want 2 per row all the way until you get to the end of the hat. So that was 1 for this row, and then I'll keep going around. And that's kind of the beauty of it. You don't need a really complicated written out pattern. You're just going to take away 2 stitches every row until you get to the end. So it's super simple, not a very fussy pattern, and it works up relatively quickly. It's not a really, really long stocking cap. If you wanted it to be longer, significantly longer, you could instead decrease just 1 per row, and then it would be about twice as long, because it would take you twice as long to get done. So if you want a long stocking cap, that is how you would do it. I'm feeling like maybe I'll do my other decrease about here. And with the red, for sure, I'm not doing joins. I'm working continuously in the round so that I don't have an obvious seam on one side of my hat. Obvious seams are the enemy. You can tell that where I started the red is a little bit farther over from where I started the white. You can try and line those up when you come around the row. Just start doing that decreases, the single crochet and then the slip stitch a couple rows or a couple stitches before where this seam was. I started it right at the seam, so then my red ended up starting a couple stitches over. I'm not worried about that, but if that bothers you, that's an easy enough fix. You just start a little bit earlier. So now I'm done with my second row of red, and on my next row I'm going to do 2 more decreases. I think I'm going to put I'll put my first one here, and then I'll put my other one kind of opposite over here. Again, not being super picky about exactly where it ends up. At this point I have continued on. I've done 2 decreases per row, every row going up. And now I'm getting to the end here. And at the very end, it's kind of hard to keep track of rows a little bit, but we're just going to keep going until we can close up the whole thing. You don't necessarily have to work until like the last 2 stitches or whatever, but and once I close this up, then you can top it with whatever kind of pom-pom you want. I chose this kind of droopy floppy pom, but you could do like a regular white pom-pom, really whatever you want. It's, you know, your hat. Not that I need to tell you that, because you know it's your hat, of course. And again, if you wanted like a long skinny stocking cap, you could just increase 1 stitch per row instead of 2, and that would make it long and skinny. Total yarn, this took me about 80 grams of yarn to make the whole hat, not including the pom. It was about 50 grams of red and about 30 grams of white for this part, just to give you an idea of what you will need. You definitely can get it done even with the pom with just 2 skeins of yarn. Okay. So I am pretty much done here. And I don't even need to close up the very end of it, because I can just sew that closed when I sew the pom-pom on. If I want to, but I'm just gonna slip stitch that closed right there. maybe. Okay. And trim off my thread. So that is the hat. Again, it's a really just basic pattern. So just to cover it again, you've got a row of half double crochet, 10 rows of half double crochet in the third loop, and then you switch to red, you do one more row of half double crochet in the third loop, and then you just do half double crochet all the way out, decreasing by 2 stitches every row. And for mine, I staggered the decreases so you can see there's not really an obvious seam place. You're going to see a little bit where I started working in the round in the back on both the white and on the red, but that's okay. But there's not an obvious seam on the red part. It's pretty continuous because I changed up where those increases, or rather decreases, were on every row. So now all I have left to do is make a pom for the top. So to do that, if you watched the tutorial on making a pom-pom, I am just doing basically that. But I'm going to use red and white held together because I liked how that looked on the end of this. You could just use white or whatever. And on this one, I think I'm going to make it a little bit smaller than I made this one. Okay, so I'm going to cut a little length of this just to make it easier to tie. This is just a pudding wrapper from my recycle bin. Honestly, I always just pick whatever I can find to wrap. So this is here just to be the string that I will tie around when I'm done. So let me get my white and my red. And I'm just going to start wrapping this around. Remember, the more wraps you do, the floofier your pom-pom is, and it always takes way more wraps than I think it will. With the kind of pom-pom I made for this hat, it's a kind of floppy one, and I did that on purpose, so it doesn't have to be as full of a pom-pom. But you can make it whatever kind you'd like, of course. See how much I have left. Maybe I'll just make a really fat one and use up all the rest of my red yarn here. I didn't start with a full skein of red, just FYI. So. Ooh, it's getting so big and poofy. So I've been trimming this. It still could use a little bit more. It's not quite even, but I'm going to call that good for now. And then I've got this mess of yarn scraps. And I need a lint roller or something because that red is all over. Anyway. Yeah. That's awful. Okay. So now we just need to attach this to our hat. So I left these 2 strings. This is just what I used to tie it on. And so this is the top of my hat. I'm just going to go like this and pull one of these strands through. And then the other one I will pull through from the opposite direction. And then I will tie this up. You could attach this whatever way you want. That's just how I did it. Just a simple knot. And I've got my little tassel, or pom-pom rather. And then these ends I'll weave into the inside of the hat. So that is how to make this little Santa hat or a stocking cap with crochet. Just zoom it out a little bit. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. This month I'm going to try and have a free little pattern, probably nothing too big because I know we're all busy at the holidays, each day this month, or not each day, each week this month. So subscribe to the channel and get all those videos, and happy crocheting and happy holidays.